Is patriotism good or bad? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. Is patriotism good or bad? The standard definition of patriotism is love of country and devotion to one's compatriots. So, off the bat, it doesn't seem bad. Let's get into it. So, love of country. So, on Earth, at some point in history, humans decided to make countries. And countries are political creations where different governments got together and they basically said, let's draw landlines, let's draw borders. And the history of these landlines and borders vary greatly, and they get drawn by different reasons. And they're mainly enforced through the threat of violence, both mainly all through state power. And that goes back to really the beginning of the history of borders and nations and countries. And obviously through history, there's been a lot of problems with where those lines end up. Now, the creation of those lines a lot of times doesn't go through the proper ethnic makeup of the area or the proper cultural area portions of the area, so that groups that should be living together aren't, and groups that shouldn't be living together are. And that's been the historical tension point for a lot of hostilities on Earth. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes nations are drawn in, the lines are pretty good and people are happy with them. Now, however the lines are drawn in a particular country, or however they shake out, what we know is that humans, nearly since the dawn of time, have had, and not all humans, but many, many groups of humans from different parts of the world, have had a borderline obsession with creating borders and definitions and essentially ruling zones, areas of governance where decisions can be made from the top and go out to the bottom. And it seems to be endemic to the human condition. Almost every group of humans ends up creating sociological units and enforcing borders and territories based on whatever resources they think are necessary for the survival of the groups that formed in those areas. So when we take those and we look through them through time, and we take the modern assessment off of it, and we just say, okay, cool, it's a thing that humans do. Humans, they get an area, they make sociological units, they create solutions to life in certain areas, and then they codify their borders and their territories and pretend to own the land and create governments to oversee it all. But over time, enough of those different sects of humans did that and recognized each other's borders and stuff enough to the point where it's normal. Now, the discussion of whether nations should exist or borders should exist, that's for a different video. That's a different topic altogether. But dealing with Earth as it is, where nations exist and life is built around them, and the evolution of the species is intertwined with it and sort of inextricably intertwined with it now. When you're a member of a well-functioning nation, or even not a well-functioning nation, but if you're a member of a nation and you look at it from the perspective that it's a big community, which is what it is. And in this case, don't look at the type of the political system or the type of the whatever. This is just the theoretical sort of generic nation scenario in this. It could be any nation. And when we look at it first as simply a community of human beings, who are living together under a set of the same rules and governances, and they are aware of that, and they are aware of, you know, their social contract or the basic rules of what's going on in that nation, just in a theoretical way. A person who is in that nation, who loves to be part of this bigger community called the nation, and wants the best for the people living in it, himself, his neighbors, his children, his family, his friends, and then all the people that he'll never meet, or she, all the people that person will never meet within that nation. And they just want the best. They just want people to be able to live their lives and live according to the rules, and everybody be happy, and everybody get what they need, and just live happy lives. And it's not a political discussion. It's just a community discussion. They just see their living unit, the sociological unit that has been called a nation, as their sort of macro home. That's their macro community, is their nation. And their main thought is just, it would be nice if everybody could live their best life in this macro community that we refer to as a nation. To me, that is a good thing. To me, that's the point that humans should aspire to get to, is that each one of us, once we become self-aware and we're conscious and we look around and we understand what it takes for a community to exist and to grow and to be healthy, that each level of community that we become aware of, we sincerely hope for the best and we participate to the best of our abilities. So, you know, it usually begins within the house, because a nation is sort of an abstract concept in a way, because you're never going to meet all the people, and you're probably never going to see all the territories in the nation, and you're never even going to meet all the leaders of the nation. So in a way, it's a very abstract thing that you can't really put your finger on. So really, a nation begins at home. It begins in each individual's living situation. And so the idea being that if a human can get comfortable with the community beginning under their own roof and taking care of the things in your own house, and then it slowly extends out, then you, okay, cool, I got my house in order. Okay, what's the next thing? Oh, well, I'm neighborly, right? And neighbors doesn't mean you just live next to somebody. Neighbors means that you have a positive connection to the people that you live near, and that you open your heart to them in some capacity, where there's compassion, there's some empathy, there's willingness to help each other. You don't really become neighbors until you feel the love. You don't really you don't really have neighbors. You're not really neighbors until you know that you're willing to at least look out for each other or positively affect each other's lives somehow. And then once you go from neighbors, then it can grow. Then, oh, okay, now people around your town know who you are, and you're connected to the people in your town. And then maybe it grows, and then all of a sudden people in your city know you, and you know about your city, you know how your city works, and then your county and your state and your nation, and so on and so forth, right? So it just kind of just keeps growing out. But since a nation is, it's a governing territory and an abstract community in the mind, in the consciousness, more than a really concrete thing, because it's so large. The most concrete part of a nation is really just what's under your roof, what's under your house. And then from there, we learn the values to grow out into, you scale up. just like a business. It's the business of being a citizen. It's the business of being a patriot. Is that you learn to love your life within the nation that you're in, and you learn to love the community that you're in, and then you scale up. And it's also one of those things where in the modern world, if you're born into a nation and you don't like the nation that you're in, you can switch nations. That's a thing you can do. You can have citizenship in more than one nation. You can move. You can live to different ones. You can move to different communities. It's not easy. Never is. Uprooting oneself is never easy, especially if you're in a nation where, let's say, your family's lived there for untold number of generations. The inertia of living in an area is extremely strong. So it is difficult. And for some people, it's impossible because you're in totalitarian areas. But for most of the people on the earth, like, it is an option to move around. But no matter where you're born, and no matter what system you're in for the nation, it really begins at home. And then it extends to your neighbor, and then your neighborhood, and your town, and your city. And then it just sort of scales up. And to have a love of that, to love your life, to show love and want to have compassion for the welfare of those that you interact with and share this life with, even though it's under this variable political system and cultural system and all these other factors that, not everybody's always happy with. That's completely healthy. It's completely healthy to want the best for your community, given the information that you have. You can't help it if you're part of a community and the leaders aren't giving you the full information and they're gaslighting you and doing terrible stuff in the background that you don't know about. Like, you can't help that. You can dig deeper into it and see if they are, but that's not necessarily on you. In terms of your love for the welfare of your community and the quality of life for the individuals in it, which is what makes you a patriot, that's awesome. Now, philosophically and historically, corrupt rulers take that heartfelt, wholesome, straightforward love of just wanting to live in a good neighborhood under good leadership all the way up the levels, which that's what patriotism is. They take that good, wholesome intention, and through time, a lot of times they'll use that as an excuse to do terrible things. Corrupt leaders will do that. Corrupt leaders will then say, "Oh, I really have like military industrial complex contracts in my back pocket that I need to feed. So I'm going to take all these people and take their good-heartedness about their love of their macro community, and I'm going to turn that into hatred of enemy X so I can make a buck, or I can get all these different agenda items or perks and privileges that I want out of this corrupt system that I've set up that I haven't necessarily informed my constituents of." And then that goes through time from the ruling class to tell everybody, like, oh, all forms of patriotism, being a patriot is bad because, or like loving your nation is bad because look at what these people did. And really what they're pointing to are a bunch of people who they had corrupt leadership who took their wholesome love of their nation as a wholesome community and then twisted it to meet their political agendas of hate and profit, and set them loose and gave them an enemy and lied to them, gaslit them, and usually it's a trail of propaganda that leads them there. So, and that's usually the big stumbling block when it comes to the issue of patriotism, is that many corrupt leaders have used patriotism falsely to begin wars and conflicts and do terrible stuff. But that's not what it is. That's the misuse of it. That's the misappropriation of it. Patriotism is simply the love of your community, the love of your nation, and of your fellow citizens in it. And you wanting them to see them do well, which actually is that's one of the prime tenets in classical liberalism, is just valuing the quality of the individual and valuing the life experience and the quality of the individual, with the idea that if we set a quality life environment for everybody and we can live together, then we can grow and learn lessons and have a fulfilling and meaningful life that otherwise would be unavailable to us. The idea of society isn't just survival for humans. The idea of society for humans is supposed to be that if we live together in harmony, that something greater than the sum of the parts can bloom in us. Something beautiful can happen in a beautiful nation, a beautiful society, where if we can walk around and look people in the eyes with dignity, like the point of like having a good community isn't because it looks good in pictures. The point of having a good community is so that you can walk around and everybody can have human dignity and everybody can be enjoying that they're all contributing to the well-being of society. And why? What's the point of contributing to the well-being of society? Well, so that the vibes get good, so that beautiful new things can happen, so that new experiences can be enjoyed, so that unity can flourish, so that we can feel good about who we are instead of like always being told that we're terrible, instead of looking into our darkest recesses with our most cynical eyes. We can look upwards into the heavens and gaze with souls like God. These are the things that we can do when we have a real unified community. And it really does begin with patriotism. And it doesn't matter what nation you're in. It doesn't even matter the health of your nation. Like, in fact, if your nation's really sick, if your community is really sick, it requires patriotism more, so that more people, more healthy people who have good hearts can get involved and bring cures for the ills that beset that particular nation. The answer to curing a patient is never to not bring more doctors in. It's never to put the patient in a room and close the door and never treat them. That doesn't cure anybody. So there are noble aspirations embedded in a healthy nation, which is a macro community. And the name for the people that actually love their macro community is patriot. Well, thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you found it helpful. And as always, have fun.